everyone. Thanks for coming out. This should be a fun class. It's going to get a little bit on some of the stuff. If you have questions about some of the equipment, you can see me after. Some specific equipment. We're not going to get through all the equipment, but it's just going to give you a baseline of what we're going over. So this class is designed to give you a basic concept of how to deal with a disaster. And being that you all live in a being that you live in a place where you can have a lot of earthquakes, earthquake prone or mudslide prone or flood prone, it's something that's smart to get to know and some basic things to have. Has anybody lived through any major disasters? Anybody in New Orleans, anybody in that crazy earthquake that happened here in? Yes. Yeah. How'd that work for everybody?
It was interesting.
What happened?
Everything shut down.
Everything shut down.
Yeah, we couldn't get to anything.
Okay. So some background on myself before we get into this. I grew up in a super poor environment, and it was ridiculous to what we were doing. And it would have been very simple. I lived in South Texas for us to go hunting and kill a deer, grow our own food. But my mom was super anti-gun, which is funny because later I became a Marine sniper and a reconnaissance Marine. But it would have been much easier to be able to go kill a deer. It's $150 for a decent rifle, one enough to kill a deer, and $10 for a box of ammo, and you have a freezer full of animal forever. She didn't do it, so then I wanted to learn how to become self-sufficient and just be able to live my life without having to need any of these things. And then I ended up in a couple places, in various places in the world, where I ended up having to rely on myself and another person in some survival situations. And then I realized, talking to friends, that most folks didn't actually have any concept of how to handle themselves in a disaster. And at first I thought it was just skill set. I can go out in the woods and I can make a fire with 2 sticks and some string. I can, make a shelter in an hour and a half that will keep me warm in a blizzard. I can do all these things. I can get water from wherever I am. I did a show for Discovery where I was a survival guy on that. And I had all these things, and then I realized it has nothing to do with skill set, because we have these kids that go out and they get lost for a week with nothing, and we find them and they're alive. And it's like, okay, so why are grown-ups dying in 24 to 48 hours from hypothermia? Why are they dying from, basically because they're scared. Their stress response is too high, and they don't know how to deal with it. So then I began to look at it from a mindset perspective. And so your mindset is the most important, and then your skill set. The more skills you have, the easier it gets. You throw me out there with my bag, that bag goes almost everywhere with me. If I have that bag, I'm good forever. Until I'm crotchety and can't stand up anymore, or if I break something seriously, then I'm screwed. But if that doesn't happen and I'm walking on 2 feet, I can take care of myself. The mindset was the most important. I was dating a girl in Hawaii. It was our first date. We were up in the mountains, and it was this ridiculously steep way to get back to where we were going, and it got dark on us because it was a hike that she's used to, and I wasn't from that part of the island. So she said, I want to take you on a hike. Went on a hike, and all of a sudden she wanted to walk out in the middle of the dark. And I'm like, I'm not walking out in this. This is crazy. And at that time I was a sniper in the Marine Corps, so I did that stuff all the time, but I'm not going to rely on somebody else to guide me when I don't have a map, a compass, or any of that. She was terrified to be there overnight. And finally talked her into hanging out. I built a little shelter. We hung out for the night. It was a first date. And, and after that first date, we wake up, and where she wanted to take her next few steps, there was a cliff. She would just fallen off the edge. So it's this idea where, can you be comfortable enough to be uncomfortable? And once you can be comfortable enough to be uncomfortable, and you're okay with that, then this disaster stuff gets easier. Okay? And there's some really basic things that you need to know in disaster. The first, obviously, let's talk a little bit about stress. And then if anybody has questions, you can feel free to ask questions. This is going to have some sort of linear progression. We're going to get into some of this in a minute, but I want to give you an overview of stuff first. Stress itself causes all kinds of crazy issues. Once your adrenaline spikes and your cortisol spikes, and especially living in the world that we live in now, and most people are spiking their adrenaline and cortisol all day with sugar, coffee, traffic, deadlines, what was normally your fight, flight, or freeze mechanism is now always on. And so that's, we're seeing that stress has the exact same problems that nutrition has on causing dysfunction in the body, whether it's carrying visceral adipose tissue, whether it's causing diabetes, whether it's causing Alzheimer's, whether it's causing cancer. Stress can do the same thing that nutrition can do. And if your stress is way off if your wheels are way off the wagon, then when you do receive extra stress, your body can't handle it, and you go into a panic or a shock mode. It's not a good place to be. You go into flight mode when you don't need to. You go into freeze mode when you don't need to. You're going to die. You're going to have some serious issues. So learning how to handle stress before you get into a situation will really help. So there's something called hormetic stress and non-hormetic stress. There's a really good book on Amazon for free called Hormesis, and it talks about this. There's another really good book called Why Don't Zebras Get Ulcers by Sapolsky. If you don't want to read that book, then he has a National Geographic thing that's free on Netflix about stress. His name is Sapolsky. Now, once you learn how to control stress, then when you get into a stressful environment, it's easier to keep your mindset together. So really start working on your stress before you even start worrying about your skill set. That's going to be one of the most important things that you can do. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. Mindset, skill set, and preparation. You have three options when a disaster happens, no matter what the disaster is. It doesn't matter if you're rolling down the 101 and there's an earthquake. It doesn't matter if you're driving from here to Mammoth and all of a sudden there's an avalanche and takes out your car, brand new car, and you got a kid in the car. How do you do that? It doesn't matter if you're in a brand new vehicle and you have an infant in the car and you're driving from here to Vegas and it's 120 degrees outside and your car breaks down, you don't have air conditioner, you don't have a place to keep the kid. How do you keep the kid alive when kids have horrible ability to regulate temperature? So how do you do that if it's 120 outside and you're stuck in a car in the middle of the sun? And you may have cell service and you may not. Kids aren't, how long is your infant going to last? In that kind of heat. And if they do survive, how's that going to screw up their metabolic systems later in life? And how is it going to set up their stress response system later in life? Those are all super simple things that people don't really think about. If you end up in a car wreck on the 101 and you're in high heels, guys, just kidding. If you're in high heels, and it's gridlocked, how are you going to walk home? Are you going to wait for somebody to come get you? Do you have enough food and water to wait? Are you going to walk? Do you want to destroy your feet and your low back trying to get home? Do you have a pair of shoes in your car? Do you have enough water to walk back in your car? Do you have enough food so you can snack in your car? If you have a kid, do you have something that they like? A teddy bear? Do you have some hard candy for them to mess with, being able to keep them under control? So those are some really basic concepts that people forget to think about that can happen to anybody, right? What happens if you're in a, well, we can get into that later. All right, so you have three basic options in any disaster. What do you think they are?
Stay put.
You stay put, all right. What else?
Call for help.
Okay, you call for help. In disaster, you probably don't have cell service.
Yeah.
You probably don't have landlines, so call for help. Help! It's probably not going to fly. All right, what else you got?
Run.
Okay, go. Stay. Okay. That's a good one, though. Okay, so you can either wait for government agencies to come help you and expect someone to take care of you. You can set up a controlled living environment and stay put, or you can take off and go. And that's going to be specific to the situation that you're in. So let's look at those. Okay, if this is disaster and we have go and we have stay. For all of them, you have some basic things that okay, so before that you have three basic, you have short term, mediocre term, and long term, and then you have infinite, or you may have to stay there forever, whatever. Probably not. Short term is within 24 hours. Do you have enough with you to survive for 24 hours? We see kids that survive with nothing for a week. So really, you should be able to survive for 24 hours without eating, unless you're diabetic or have some sort of weird disease. Then you have 24 to 72 hours, that 3-day window, and then you have 72 to 2 weeks, and then 2 weeks on. So Katrina would have been a 2 weeks on kind of thing. Okay. An earthquake out here could be anywhere between a 24 and 72 hour, maybe even a 2 week, depending on how bad it is. Okay, so you need different kits for the different stuff, but each kit has to have something specific. Well, what do you think that you would need in general terms for most of your kits?
Water.
Okay, we have to have a way to get water.
First aid.
Okay, first aid.
Some sort of tool that we can weapon.
Tool.
Light.
We'll put, that's a tool would be a light. So water, first aid. Let's toss in fire. You guys mind fire?
Yeah.
What else you need? Food. What else?
Latrine.
I'm sorry?
A latrine.
All right.
Radio.
Do you need a radio? Bathroom. You don't need one, but that'd be a tool. What else you need?
Blanket.
Shelter. And a blanket is shelter. Okay, so you need all those things, right? These are things that you definitely have to have. Does that make sense, everybody?
Yes.
Okay. And that's whether you stay or go. You're going to have the same sort of little spidery thing on that. Okay. If you stay, it can be stationary. If you go, it has to be mobile. Okay. I was talking to Scott today, and we were talking about what would happen if you have to go, and he was talking about walking on, as simple as having two little scooters, little Ruckus Honda scooters that are 50 cc. They get 100 miles per gallon. I got so people can read that. They get 100 miles per gallon. With that and an extra 2 gallons of fuel on your little Ruckus and full of your stuff, you don't need to go 50 miles an hour. You're not going to be able to. It's going to be gridlocked. You can zip around and get to San Francisco on 3 gallons of gas, 4 gallons of gas. Take your time getting there and camp along the way. And they're cheap. It's $1,000 to get 2 Ruckus, 2 old Honda Ruckuses, and all your stuff. And you can zip around and get out all that. So there's different ways to think about it. A bike is like 600 to 900 miles per gallon. You outfit a bicycle, you can ride for a long time with not, as long as it's slow, you can get around. You can zip in and out of stuff. You're not going to be able to drive out of something like LA. It's just not going to happen.